On today's episode, we'll talk about physiopsychology, the best way to build trust, American Hustle, Joker, and of course, living next door to the cast of Saved by the Bell. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. As always, our website, theop.io, is up and chock full of tips, tricks, and gooey operator goodness. Make sure to check out The Breakdown, where the best operators in the biz explain shots they have done, The Musings, where we discuss everything from quick tips to larger concepts of storytelling, the answers, the images, and so much more. I may or I may not take a break or two during this episode, but I promise that none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. Finally, if you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, write a review, share us with your parents, and talk us up around the water cooler with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Margaret. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello and welcome back to the Op Podcast, the podcast where we talk about operating and the art of visual storytelling. I'm Dave Comides, your host, and we are here yet again at Panavision Woodland Hills because it sounds better than the blanket fort in my living room. Today, great operator, director, I guess now producer, interesting guy, Geoff Haley, SOC. Some of Geoff Haley's credits as an A-camera operator, as a Steadicam operator: Avengers, Infinity War, American Hustle, Steve Jobs, Joker, Fast and Furious. It seems like I could put any number after that because there are a number of them there. A couple of the awards that he's won. SOC's Camera Operator of the Year winner in 2021 for Cherry, and 2020 for Joker. He was nominated in 2016 for Steve Jobs, 2014 for American Hustle, and 2011 The Fighter. I just have to take a breath because there's a lot of these. In 2019, he won the Operators Award from the BSC for Joker. He won the Grand Jury Prize for The Last Word, which is something that he directed in 2008. In 2002, he had a short that won the Honorable Mention Award called The Parlor at a number of festivals, and also was an AFI Festival winner, the Audience Award for Best Short. It goes on and on. He's a really talented individual, and I'm really psyched to have him here. Geoff, thank you for being here.
Dave Comides, thank you for having me.
Did I get all that right? Did I miss anything?
You got everything right except for one thing, and that's a problem with IMDb. The feature film at Sundance was nominated for the jury prize, but did not win the jury prize.
Well, then get out of here. I don't want to talk to you.
I feel like, you know what? It's been a great interview.
I feel like I've been duped. That was Geoff, everybody. Thank you very much.
Do you validate parking is my only question.
No. If you had not lied on IMDb, I would validate parking. No, but thank you so much. I didn't know that about you with the directing. I mean, I know you're moving, you've got things coming up, but I didn't realize that you'd actually won some awards for it, and that's impressive.
Yeah, I've directed 2 pilots that didn't get picked up. I directed 2 different series, 4 episodes. I've done some, so I've been definitely dabbling in the directing world for the last 20 years in and out. But as a testament to what it is that we do in this community, I keep going back to operating because I tell you, and you hear it over and over and over, but it's absolutely true. Operating really is the best job on the set, and that includes directing. So
I don't disagree. I've done both, and there's a reason I'm still an operator.
Exactly.
So tell me your story. How'd you get here?
Well, I got here on the 101 and then took DeSoto.
By the way, if you had said anything other, maybe if you said the 405, I wouldn't have been surprised. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't live on the west side. Okay, I'm Silver Lake all the way.
All
so 405, I'm going to avoid. It's a long, convoluted story that involves mystery and intrigue and death. Believe it or not, all those things are true. But there's also a couple of other interviews and podcasts that I've done where I've gone into detail about the sordid story of how I became an operator in Los Angeles. I will give a very brief Cliff Notes version, and if anybody's interested in the actual the nitty-gritty details of it, then they're welcome to check out the Walking Backwards podcast.
I'll
or
just
some of the
actually
others.
save myself the time and cut that in here, and then people can listen to it. But actually, it is a great podcast. There's more drinking in the Walking Backwards podcast generally than mine.
Well, that's true. Unfortunately, I don't really drink, and so he offered me drinks, and I did not.
It's funny because I did
them.
the exact same thing. Because all I thought was, if I drink, I'm going to get really stupid. So I'm not
No,
gonna
that's true,
drink.
exactly. But if I don't drink, since I'm not getting paid for this, I'm actually the sucker because I'm actually working for absolutely nothing as opposed to
Exactly.
like the
Yeah.
$5 that I would have been able to. Anyway, I basically get long story short. I never came up as an assistant. I went to Stanford University as an undergrad, and I got a master's degree in as well in something called psychophysiology. It's something that I liked to study because it involved a lot of the things that I was interested in all the way up through childhood into adulthood.
What is that? Just brief. Like, what's
It's interesting. It's the sort of the study of the in layman's terms, all the external stimuli that are sort of making their way through the cosmic universe, how they enter the body and how the brain deals with them essentially.
Never heard of this. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of offshoots from that, including artificial intelligence and physiology and anthropology and social psychology and all sorts of other things. I basically just knew that I was going to go into the film industry, and I wanted to go to a school on the West Coast so that I could spend my summers working in LA.
Wow.
And so my parents, who are both professors, who are very supportive of me following my dreams, were, of course, very nervously supportive of me and would never admit to me that they were terrified that I was going to go into an industry that they could not help me with at all, that they had only heard rumors that it was a mysterious place where people get
Where
sucked
did you
into
grow
black
up?
holes. Well, I grew up originally in Germany.
Okay.
But when I was 9, we all moved to Pennsylvania, and
Okay,
so
but it's the
on
other
East
side of the
Coast.
country,
The other
so
side of
it's
the country.
like,
So
ooh,
I
he's going
made
to
the decision,
California.
to travel 3,000 miles away. But that was sort of the agreement that I made with myself and tacitly with my parents as well, which is, I'm going to go get a degree in something that's not not film, and I'll let my film school be the 4 summers during college, but then I'll emerge with something that can be printed on a piece of paper and maybe will get me a job, on Monster.com. Who knows? Luckily haven't had to experiment with that or try that out yet. But it was a great experience for me because one of the things that I knew I wanted to be involved in film, and I knew I wanted to be a storyteller. And I was hemming and hawing between whether or not to go to film school or not to go to film school. And
You mean like graduate school afterwards?
yeah, or
instead
even
of-
undergrad,
or
right? I
even
mean,
undergrad,
I know a lot of people that either went to undergrad film school or graduate,
Sure.
AFI, whatever have you. But I found out something a lot of people told me after I had made the decision to not go to film school. People told me, you may have made the right decision because if you want to be a storyteller, you may consider the notion that before you learn how to make a movie, you want to learn what to make a movie about. And I think that's something that I've really taken to heart as well. And that's not to say that I would want to take anything away from people who made the choice to go to film school. The irony of this is that I do a lot of lecturing at film schools. In fact, I'm about to do a lecture next week at a film school. And the first question that I always get after I have my long 3-hour-long prepared with clips and Hulu skirts and whatever it takes to try to get these people's attentions, the first question I always get is, do you think it's a good idea to go to film school? Which I think is really strange because here I am at film school talking to people who have been paying for film school. And I mean, that's a gutsy question.
By
to
the way,
ask.
do you ever just go no and next?
Believe me, in my dream of dreams, I want to I want to have like a suitcase, and I open the suitcase and I take out a microphone that is not attached to anything. And after I hear that question, I say no, and then drop the microphone on the ground and walk out. But I don't actually believe that. I don't actually believe it. And I think that film school, whether you're a director, producer, actor, writer, cinematographer, art director, can be a good idea. It's just depends on the type of person you are and the type of guidance you need. And I always tell people, look, if you are inherently, naturally a self-starter, somebody that ever since you were young saw something and figured out a way to come after it without needing to be involved in some sort of a structure that gets you to that place, then maybe film school isn't necessary for you, because arguably you could spend a couple of summers in LA like I did between college and basically knock on a bunch of doors like an idiot and say, please, 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 please teach me everything you can. And I promise that I, won't be too much of an idiot if I can avoid it. So that is an option, but a lot of people say like, no, I like and need the structure that film school offers for me. Also, a lot of people who are not necessarily antisocial, but definitely not on the super type A personality, social connector, butterfly type of person, they might benefit from the socializing elements and the networking that comes from being in a film school.
And not just and not even that, but it's connections. You make a movie with some director, you make some short, and that you're the person they know. So when they get something else, they call you, or you call them, or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. And interestingly, I think most people don't understand this when they're young, because they're often trying to level up to the person that is already doing what they want to do, or the people that they want to work with that are already leveled up. And oftentimes what turns out to be the case is that the people that are at your level but parallel to you, the writers, directors, actors, producers, cinematographers, whoever, that are at your level, you're all going up at the same time. And the smartest thing you can do is to find those people that you think have something and stick with them, right? And I think that's a really great way to think about it, because, you're not necessarily going to have the ability to go to, as a young operator, to go to Chivo or to somebody, or Deacons, he operates himself, but, and basically say like, hey, please hire me for this because I'm really, I'm really excited to go do this thing. That doesn't make a lot of sense. No. And of course, you need mentors. You need to be able to learn from the people that are on levels above you. But at the same time, I think most people find that they eventually click the most with the people that they're moving up with. And so it's another reason why film school is a good idea.
Absolutely. So what did you do in those summers? You said you knocked on doors, but did you just call people like?
Yeah, I actually, because my other love was music, and I have been a classical cellist from age 5 on, and I've played with orchestras around the country. I would have said that
at the beginning. That's impressive. Like to the level that you're playing with orchestras.
I had to make a decision about whether or not I was going to become a professional cellist when I finished high school, and I applied to some music schools that I was sure were going to not accept me, which was going to make the decision for me whether to go into music or to go into film.
And let me guess, you got in.
I did get in. And so then I had to have a couple of very heartfelt nights of deciding what I wanted to do. And honestly, the decision at the end was a simple one, which is, do I want, if music is the thing that will pay my bills, it's a hard row to hoe if you're not actually soloing with the Boston Phil at age 12. If you haven't won the Van Cliburn competition, if you haven't, then most likely you're not going to be Yo-Yo Ma. And I have lots of friends who I came up with that are professional, classical musicians who are doing extremely well in the world's top orchestras, but they're still like first chair, of the Cleveland Symphony and so on, which is, again, amazing and great.
Sure.
But they're still giving private lessons. They're still holding teaching positions at universities. And at the end of the day, I decided that I might grow to resent this thing that I love so much if it wound up being the thing that I also needed to pay my bills with.
Wow. So you still play cello?
I don't play really that much anymore. In fact, it's one of those unfortunate things, and I think a lot of people that are listening to this can probably associate with this. If you were ever really good at something as a kid, good to the point where you potentially had the option to maybe make a go of it professionally, and then you stop doing that thing, and then you pick it up again and do it's horrible because you realize how much of an empty husk of a person you are with that thing.
That's so sad.
No, it is sad.
I was never good at anything, so I was lucky enough to never have this problem.
I certainly on occasion I haven't. The other problem is I should have picked the flute because that's something I could bring on the plane with me.
Yeah, the cello. You're carrying a lot of gear as a Steadicam operator anyway. But then when you go, what is this one? This is the cello.
Exactly. And by the way, the cello is the thing that you can't put under the plane because it's worth a whole lot of money and breaks easily. So the cello is the thing that you have to buy another ticket for next to you.
Oh.
And when I was younger, yes, people would buy plane tickets so that I would be walking on the plane ticket. And it's always this. I'm totally digressing.
No,
but
this is
pretty
good.
hilarious.
I love this actually.
You're walking through the airport, and you know there's going to be like 4 places where people are going to stop and be like, whoa, hold on, you can't do this.
Because you're a 12-year-old kid with a cello.
Yeah, or even a 15-year-old kid with the cello. And back then, of course, TSA wasn't as much of a thing, but it was still a thing.
with a gun and it'd be like, but it's not loaded.
Well, as long as the gun fits into a carry-on size right thing. But the cello doesn't. And so you're walking into the airport, and of course, people are stopping you saying, whoa, you got to check that. I was like, no, I don't. And then you whip out the ticket and say, I have a ticket for this person. For this person who's not a person. But, you just feel like an idiot because another 20 feet later, someone's going to come up to you, and then you get to the gate agent. They're like, no, hold on. You've got to check that. I was like, no.
Yeah, you want to have a T-shirt that says, no, the cello has its own ticket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The cello is going first class.
Wow, okay.
I'm going economy.
That's hysterical. Please don't feed it. That's great. Oh, I had no idea.
Anyway, so that's the main reason why I don't really play the cello much anymore. But to go back, man, did we go
I love this stuff. By the way, this is the stuff that interests me. It's like operating is whatever. But anyway,
So to answer your question, what I did during college, during the summers during college, because I had background in music, I was smart enough to know that, and because I did love the idea of camera, but I had no entree into it.
Well, so I was wondering, you don't know anybody, so what do you do?
Exactly. Yeah. But what I could do was come up to sound mixers and say, hey, I'm into sound. I'm into music. I've done some recording. I've done obviously a lot of playing and singing. I was also a singer and a jazz drummer as well while I was in college. And so I've spent a lot of time around recording studios. So I'm like, hey, and I picked back then for those people who are younger than we are.
When is this then, by the way? This is 90s?
This was early 90s, like
Okay.
1990. Yeah,
Okay.
was my first year. Back then, you could do a non-union. You could have a non-union movie in LA that was a decent budget.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
you
existed.
could be on $5, $6, $7, $8 million movies that were non-union movies.
Like those movies of the week, for instance. Those were
or
there's a
not
little smaller,
even
but still,
those. I mean, the very first movie that I ever did was called National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon 1.
I almost remember this. This seems like not that I saw it, but I remember it existing. Yeah.
Peter Deming was the DP on that.
Wow. Okay.
And it was a non-union movie.
Yeah.
And with non-union movies, you weren't getting union wages, and you weren't getting the fringes and all that sort of
Hours
stuff.
and all that.
But in the sound department, and this is some of the research I had been doing up at Stanford, like, okay, when I go down there, here's going to be my in, right? I'm going to find the sound department, because in non-union movies, they have a 2-person sound team as opposed to a 3-person sound team. The cable person or the utility was a luxury that was required by the union, but was generally not involved even in high-budget non-union movies. So I went to the sound mixers and I said, hey, I noticed you have a two-person sound team. Could you use somebody that has a lot of experience with audio and sound? and I will work as a PA or whatever, this and that. And this is where that whole tawdry story of death and horribleness.
That we're gonna.
I recommend that you
someone else
switch.
can listen to.
Yeah,
some
exactly.
other time.
Switch channels.
There'll be a link, I promise.
Exactly.
But so basically, but
dark.
in a nutshell, you basically went where is there a need and which need can I fill, and
Yes.
that's my in.
Exactly.
Even though that's not where I want to be, sound, but it gets
Right.
me onto the set. It's an
That's
entry
right,
level.
right? And I was working on some amazing movies, Batman 2, The Player, Jurassic Park. I was doing all these things as sort of on occasion, even non-paid PA, but usually was paid. But I actually also very quickly, even on the first movie, the union came in and organized the show. So after a week of having first set foot on a movie,
The first movie you've ever worked on any
National
capacity.
Lampoon's Loaded Weapon 1.
Loaded Weapon 1, okay. Yep.
It's very important to say the 1.
No, the 1. Because the 2 and the 3 were okay, but 4 was a terrible.
Oh my God,
yeah.
that was amazing. They came in and suddenly, and because there was a death, it turned out that I turned out to be the boom operator on a union show that I had never been on a set. Basically, I'd been on a set for a week, and I went from nothing to a union boom operator on the show.
Oh my gosh.
Which meant that I was then able to go, first of all, come back to school with $25,000 in my pocket, right? That I wasn't expecting to have, right? So so that was nice.
So you did that movie the whole summer, basically.
Basically, the whole summer, yeah.
Wow.
And again, there's other ins and outs having to do with that, which I won't get into now. But so, and while I was doing sound work during those 4 summers, you better believe that I took, and this is a good note for young operators or anybody that is looking to climb the ladder, I immediately made beelines and became friends with the camera department, especially the operators, especially Steadicam operators, because I had seen a documentary on Steadicam when I was very young. And I thought, okay, this is something I want to do. It reminded me of something that I loved to do as a kid and still on occasion do. And we have an operator that's actually very good at this, windsurfing. Oh. It's very similar to windsurfing in ways that, unless you've done both, you wouldn't really understand.
Who's the operator who's really good at it?
Chris Harhoff is an expert windsurfer.
Oh, of course, Harhoff is an expert.
Yeah,
I didn't know that, but that makes perfect sense. Yeah, okay.
So I loved. I mean, anybody who does Steadicam, and again, there are plenty of people that are not Steadicam operators who are wonderful operators, and I commend them to that choice because, you know, a Steadicam isn't all rainbows and sunshine. But I immediately saw, even from the outside perspective, right, as a person that is literally new to the film industry and working in a separate department. You see the camera department, and then you see, okay, it's time for a Steadicam shot, and then it's sort of like, okay, there's this person that is sort of doing 85% of what the rest of the camera department was doing en masse, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, wow, I know that I want to be a storyteller. I didn't have my heart set on being in the camera department, even though my love affair with the camera department and with camera certainly, started to flow very quickly once I was doing more of it. But I saw, like, okay, this is a storyteller that's got a lot of impact on the story in ways that are emotional, physical, intellectual, and all sort of wrapped up in one package. And that was exciting to me. And I became friends with these Steadicam operators. And
do you remember who some of the first ones that you met were?
The first person that let me put on a
Everybody
rig
remembers the first person that let me put on a rig.
Was Andrew Rollins.
Andrew Rollins,
yeah,
sure. Wonderful guy.
I was
now
doing
a great DP.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I was doing a movie called Shadow Chaser 3, Beyond the Edge of Darkness.
So much better than 2.
It seems like all of the early movies that I did were very wordy titles.
It was always like, da 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 da, number 4, colon, and then there's like a
Exactly.
whole nother line. It's like they had to fill space on the one sheet or
Exactly,
something.
right? Because the pictures of the people were not very good.
No, that's
Because
great. I love that.
It wasn't
and I
Bruce
always
Willis.
it's like I tell people that I worked at Corman a little bit, and I worked on Carnosaur 2.
Oh,
and,
boy.
And I always
That's
point
classic.
out, I always point out it's because Carnosaur 1 left all those questions. So of course,
Of course, they had to be added. They had to be answered those questions.
But anyway, so Andrew Rowlands, that's
yeah,
cool.
and a whole bunch of other folks, Ross Judd, people
Ross
like
Judd,
that.
yeah.
And it was great because they let me put the rig on, and I was very excited about that. And so I stayed in sound for one year after graduating.
So you
as a
did it
boom
all
operator.
4 summers,
All
and
4
then
summers.
a year after, like
And
as
then
a job.
exactly, as a job, as a boom operator.
And you moved down to LA, I'm
I
assuming,
moved,
at
yeah,
that point?
immediately moved down with 8 of my best friends. We were all in an a cappella singing group,
Of course.
And again, by the way, this is 1994, before a cappella was cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, a cappella is again not cool. So a cappella was cool.
It's before
and
the
then,
moment
and then
where a
Glee
cappella-
happened,
Exactly.
and all those other projects happened, and then it was super cool, and then it's super not cool again.
So had you just been a couple of years later, you would have basically been an actor on Glee and not a Steadicam
Well,
operator.
but I think we're talking 20 years later, right? Or 15.
Oh, maybe,
Yeah,
maybe
I think.
you're-
I mean,
yeah, okay.
I'd
So,
have
all
to
right,
wait a
forget
long
about it.
time.
Yeah.
My waitressing job or waitering job would have
So
been
did all 8 of you like live in the house together, kind of thing?
So 6 of us lived in an apartment in North Hollywood. About
A studio.
no, it was a 3-bedroom apartment,
Yep.
and it was
I love
5 dudes and no, it was 6 dudes exactly. That's right. Later, the year later, we had a girl come and live with us. And the funny thing is, it was such a weirdly Hollywood experience because it was 6 blocks from Warner Brothers. It was on Hollywood Way, the corner of Verdugo and Hollywood Way, and it was one of these apartment structures that has the shag carpeting and
That's so great.
right and like jacuzzis outside
Yeah.
and the mirrored
It was like the pad.
yeah like the mirrored closets
Yep.
and they all looked the same, but it was not low end. I mean, it was fairly high end,
Yeah.
and I knew it was high end because half of the cast of Saved by the Bell, including Screech,
Okay.
lived right above us.
Well, right there, you've made it, right?
And this is where I got quite an education. Right next to us were 3 15-year-old emancipated models
oh,
that had
God.
like moved there. I don't even know from where. I was terrified of them.
This is so Hollywood. It's
It was
great.
very. I mean, a couple of my friends or my roommates became friends with them, but I was always so terrified of that.
These 15-year-olds.
Of course. I mean, I wasn't that much older than them,
Yeah.
but the fact that they had somehow done what they did
Yeah.
and were now essentially doing that job,
Yeah.
at that age, and were impossibly attractive.
Yeah, of course,
it's like the kind of thing you see them
And
like
dressed
in,
to the hilt every
right
time
there
you see
in
them.
one of our 3 hot tubs, and you're just like running away because you feel like I feel like I'm gonna get. I'm gonna get
hysterical.
I don't know, arrested for just like walking within 20 feet of that. It was but it was really cool. I will say this, ironically, Stanford actually has a pretty tight network in Hollywood.
Oh.
A lot of people have gone to Stanford. Gail Unheard went to Stanford. Jay Roach, for example, went to.
But there's a film program that shoots them
Not
out here,
really.
or they went to things
There
like
is
you did, and they
exactly.
just
It's just it turns out that there are so few people because they do have film studies program, but it's not a production program at all.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
There are so few people that I guess are in Hollywood that went there that those who do like sort of.
They
Make
gravitate.
a connection.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay.
So,
all right. So were the other 5 people in your apartment, were they also film people?
yes, most of them were. In fact, all of them were. A couple of them are writers. A couple of them were actors.
That's cool.
And all of them are doing amazing things. Like one of them, for the longest time, was the head writer on Bill Maher's show, Politically Incorrect.
Oh my gosh.
A couple of them wrote. One of them or two went to. One of them wound up moving to New York and doing leads on Broadway. A bunch of writers that are probably right now picketing.
Yeah, right.
outside.
As we speak.
But
That's really cool.
so we and a couple of people that went the executive route. I had a friend who's also a writer, but he wound up being Scott Rudin's assistant. And anybody who knows Scott Rudin knows that
That's not an easy job.
One of the 3 worst jobs.
Yeah. There's a movie
or
about
actually,
this, I think, isn't there?
5 of the 3 worst jobs.
Yeah, right.
in Hollywood is probably being
wow,
being
that's
the assistant
amazing.
Scott Rudin.
And so since there's 6 of you in this apartment and it's the 90s, you're each paying like $150 a month.
Yeah,
or
I think
whatever
like
it was.
$300
Things have
or
changed
something like
a little
that.
bit.
But the funny thing is that we kept living together for a while, and a bunch of us would wind up like moving from apartment to apartment to apartment in different areas of the valley and so on.
It's your family, right?
And it is, but the funny thing is, I remember about 3 years into it, we were watching TV at one point, and there were like 4 of us, I think, and it was a 3-bedroom or maybe even a 2-bedroom. I don't remember. And I don't remember who it was. It wasn't me, but it was one of the others that sort of looked around as we were watching, just like, how much are you making right now? How much are you making?
We don't
How
need
much
to
are you
be
making?
here
It's like,
anymore.
we do not need to live together. We're all doing really well. So
That's great.
That was the end of it. I remember that. I remember even what we were watching. I think we were watching like a oh god, it was I think Everybody Loves Raymond or something like that. It was like some inane.
It's so random.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
great. The whole thing's great, and but that's kind of how, because you just I think that's a life lesson though. Like, you just sort of go with what's comfortable.
Yeah.
And you don't think about it, and then at some point you sort of do go, why am I still doing this? This
Right.
doesn't make any sense anymore.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, it doesn't. I'll do something else.
But also, and I think this is a really good. This talks a little bit about the golden handcuffs, and I think that's something that's actually very important, especially for people that are transitioning from one level in a department to another, right? And for those people who don't know what the golden handcuffs are, the golden handcuffs are these imaginary yet not imaginary handcuffs that get put on you when you do a job and you know you don't want to do that job for the rest of your life, but that job can pay well, and suddenly your lifestyle starts to become commensurate with what you're getting paid. So 2 things have to occur for the golden handcuffs to exist. You need to not be wanting to do the job you're doing now forever, or you need to know that you want to be doing something else, and the job that you're doing now has to actually be able to pay enough so that plenty of other people are doing that as a career.
yeah.
And so you don't have golden handcuffs when you're working at Starbucks necessarily. But when you are a camera assistant who is got equipment,
I was gonna say,
who has been a
Doesn't wanna
successful
lose
camera
that equipment
assistant
rental
for
and-
exactly, right? And those people that have families and again their standard of living goes up, and suddenly they're at the crossroads where they're saying, all right, I've been doing this now for 6 or 7 years. I told myself that I was going to be an operator, I was going to be a DP, I was going to be a director, I was going to be a haberdasher or whatever.
Haberdasher.
And I know I can't actually spend the next year taking that step back that I
Yep.
need to
Yeah.
because I've got my whole golden handcuffs on.
Yeah.
So I mentioned the golden handcuffs because that 3 years or 4 years of living with people well below we were all living below our means as opposed to above our means. We, I think, all realized, like, we don't need to be competing against the Joneses. We don't need to have all the stuff that other people have, as long as we're in a place that we feel like we can thrive
Yeah.
and we can grow and we have meaning and purpose. And if that means we can put some scratch aside, some money aside, so that when it's time to level up and we need to take some opportunity to say no to jobs, then we can do that. I think that's really important.
No, I think that's incredibly important. And it's something most people don't talk about. And it's also, by the way, we're in, I don't know how long podcasts will stay out there, but at the moment we're in the middle of the writers' strike and the Screen Actors Guild strike, so there's been no work. It also allows you to go, all right, there's a strike going on. There's a worldwide plague going on, whatever it is. I've got money in the bank, so I can actually go, okay, I'll get through this. I'll be fine. It's the same kind of thing. But as opposed to getting that first big paycheck and going out and buying the new Mercedes or the new Tesla or whatever, there's two ways to play that game. But one of them in the long run allows you the freedom to go, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't have to do that or whatever, which is power.
Or as an operator, and you and I both know people like this. They will all remain nameless. But those operators that are addicted to gear.
Oh, yeah.
Especially Steadicam operators.
Oh, yeah.
And I know there are 2 or 3 people that if something of mine broke and I needed a part or I needed
those people
thing,
that you call.
Yeah, call those people and be like, hey, I know you've got 7 of these.
Yeah, and they're like, which color do you want?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I know it's and it's also the kind of thing where sometimes you go, maybe I'll just make something for Steadicam operators and charge $5,000 that they don't need because I know there are 60 of them that will buy it.
That's true.
Simply because they don't already have it.
Exactly. It's really true.
No, I know exactly.
And that's that old adage of, you want the equipment to work for you and not for you to work for the equipment.
Yeah.
And that's not just operators. That's people at any level in any department where equipment becomes part of the game, right?
That's exactly right.
So, look, on the one hand, and you have to walk that line because people constantly ask me, and now we're in this amazing, age. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even 15 years ago, it was more difficult. If you wanted to do Steadicam, it was more difficult to find your way into the equipment because there was less stuff there.
Yeah.
And in fact, there was less stuff there and there were fewer things that were modular enough to be able to work with each other.
There was actually exponentially less stuff there because you couldn't really build a rig, and honestly, someone had to get out almost to make a rig available that was cheap enough for you to
That's
right.
right.
You didn't have the money.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so you wind up in a situation where people ask me all the time, mentees especially, they'll be like, look, I what do you think I should be buying? And it's a tricky question because on the one hand, there are pieces of equipment that will make your life easier to a degree that they will get you more work.
Yeah.
And I would say most recently, the Volt is probably, or maybe the Wave, or one of those two things is
the Horizon
probably
stabilizers,
right?
For the
because at this
Steadicam.
point, it is no longer acceptable as a Steadicam operator to have any Horizon issues. It's not acceptable, and even the people that aren't paying attention to it will notice it.
It's frustrating.
So, is that thing expensive? Sure. Should you get it early in your career? Probably you should. Mm-hmm. But there's probably 40 other things that are high-end things that you don't necessarily need. So the question I always ask is, all right, what level of work are you doing right now? What level of work are you likely to be doing in a year from now? And does the equipment that you're doing not hang you up enough from a financial perspective that you're in debt, like you don't necessarily want to be spending $120,000 on something new with all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
But if you know that within a year you may be working on projects where, dare I say, you bring in a glide cam, right, on a project that's a union project where people that know better will look at the equipment that you have, and the equipment will in flashing lights say, this person doesn't know what they're doing.
Yep.
That you don't want to do. On the other hand, you don't want to saddle yourself with so much debt that you're buying the newest, latest, greatest thing all the time. So you have to find that middle ground.
No, it's absolutely right, and it can become an addiction for some people. In all honesty, because
Absolutely.
it's sort of like something comes out and there's suddenly a perceived deficiency in yourself simply because you don't have that newest thing, but someone else does.
Yeah,
and so again,
exactly.
like you said, and it's about what you use and what you do for the job.
Yeah,
there's no question. So going back, how did you get into did you get into operating and then Steadicam, or did you get right into Steadicam?
No. Steadicam was my entry. I remember it was a year after I graduated. I was doing this movie as a boom operator called Ed. It was one of the first movies that I did that had a very short title.
Okay.
And it was about a monkey who plays baseball.
I do remember that. I don't remember the movie, but I remember.
Well, because it was Matt LeBlanc's first
LeBlanc,
movie,
right, yes.
right? DP was a guy named Alan Queso.
Alan Queso, I actually interviewed him. He's fantastic.
He has probably affected my career more than anybody.
Really?
Anybody.
Wonderful guy. He teaches at SCAD now. And the thing that
does he? I did not know that.
Yeah, he teaches cinematography at
it's amazing.
Savannah College of Art and Design.
In Savannah or in Atlanta or where?
Oh, I don't know. I assumed it was. I think it's Savannah. Yes, it is Savannah. But the thing that I love about Alan that I just sidestep, and I've said this before, that I talked to him about was, he worked on Roar.
Oh, right. Yes.
He was the camera assistant on Roar. And the day that he showed up on set, he pulled up and Jan de Bont was being taken out to an ambulance because he had been scalped.
I heard the story on this podcast.
I was literally screaming, keep the cameras or keep shooting, keep shooting. And Alan goes, I don't know why I didn't turn around.
Exactly, that should have been.
Anyway, sorry, but
I was working with a mixer who I did not like, and I'm not going to name his name. I don't even know if he's working anymore. But he was driving me crazy because I was going
backing up. Did you know what you were doing as a boom operator? Because it sounded like you learned on the job. Were you good at it?
Well, yeah, I had done four summers. 4 summers.
Oh, you had boom operated all those summers.
Yeah. I went into boom operating very quickly.
Oh, but so I guess I didn't catch that. So that first thing where you jumped up to boom operating, then you continued boom operating.
Yeah, on occasion I would do some utilitying with new mixers and so on. But no, I was a union boom operator from that early on age, which is what made it easier for me too, because as you know on set. There's like 4 people on set that really are involved in the actual filmmaking.
Sure, you're watching the Steadicam operator
and one of those people is the boom operator, right?
Yeah.
And the operator, and the actor, and the first AC. It's basically those 4 people, right?
Sure.
Those are the ones who are making the film.
So you were right in the midst of it, and you're watching everything.
So I knew that I wanted to buy a Steadicam and go into camera that way because I felt like that felt the most right for me.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the money yet because I was still saving it up. But this mixer drove me so crazy that I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to. So I called up. I was like, okay, how can I get the money to buy a Steadicam? And at that point, you had to buy a new one, or you had to wait for months to see if somebody was selling their 3A or something.
A new one was, I don't even know, what
75, 80.
75, 85, and that's without a follow focus and things.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean,
that's
it's
right.
just
exactly.
and you're still not complete. In other words, okay. So it's a big chunk of change. And just for everybody listening, $80,000 today is not what it was back then. It was like a lot more money back then.
It was equivalent of probably 150 or something like that. I mean, it was a lot.
Big deal. Yeah.
So I wasn't sure exactly how. I checked into the bank. My parents they were professors at lowly, not private, highly endowed universities. They were more like liberal arts schools.
Okay.
So they didn't make a lot of money.
Yeah. So they're not going, we got it sitting in the bank.
Exactly. So I decided I was going to call one of my advisors. I had a couple of advisors at school because the major I did involved more than one advisor. One of my advisors was Condoleezza Rice, actually.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting. Anyway, I didn't call her.
Okay.
I called an advisor who was pretty savvy with money, and one of my professors, and I asked him whether he had any ideas about how I might be able to finance something like that. Yeah. And he said, "How much do you need?" And I said, "Well, about 80,000." And he said, "Well, I guess okay." And I said, "Huh?" He thought that I was asking him for a loan.
Oh my gosh.
And he was a professor.
That's a good advisor.
At a highly endowed private university.
Yeah.
Not an undergraduate.
Okay.
So he gave me a loan at very, very favorable terms, and it was going to be a three-year payback. And so I ordered a Steadicam, and I was still working on Ed.
As a boom operator.
And I remember calling up operator friends of mine that knew me really only as a Steadicam operator
Wait, knew you as a Steadicam
I mean,
operator?
sorry,
As a boom operator.
Sorry, Steadicam operator only knew me as a boom operator.
As a boom operator.
And I said, hey, I am buying a Steadicam. If you happen to have any little job, whether it be an AFI short or a music video or anything like that you don't want to do, I think I'll be ready to like do that in a couple of 4 or 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. And I of course expected everybody to be like, yeah, sure, okay, fine. The operator on Ed was a guy named Rory Knepp.
Rory Knepp, sure. Yeah.
Who was not a Steadicam operator at that point.
Okay.
He was a regular operator.
He was a conventional operator. Yeah.
So, cut to about a week before Ed wraps, I've got my Steadicam is going to arrive in 2 weeks. So it was going to arrive a week after Ed wraps.
Okay.
I get a call from a producer saying, hey, we got your name from Andrew Rollins. We're doing a horror movie in Wisconsin, and we're looking for an A-camera Steadicam operator.
And it's an A-camera Steadicam operator
right?
as well.
And
you've never operated a camera really?
Never in my life.
Okay, not a Steadicam or conventional.
Correct, exactly. And Andrew gave us your name. Would you be interested in doing this? And I think the guy had been speaking to some other people that were not particularly keen on doing that job, because he's like, and before you say anything, I have to get this out. It only pays $6,000 a week. Which, granted, is not what a union person would get paid, but it's more than the $150 a week I would get doing Red Shoe Diaries.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I said, hey, did Andrew tell you that I don't have much experience? And by much experience, I meant no experience. And the producer said, no, he said that your resume was really thin. But this is a non-union movie, and that's why we're not paying that much. And it starts in 3 weeks, right? And so I did the math quickly. All right, I get my Steadicam in 2 weeks. I wrap this movie in 1 week, which means I'm going to have a week to figure out how to use the Steadicam.
Become a conventional and Steadicam
right,
operator.
and I have to figure out how to. Right, and so I remember.
Seems like 5 days ought to be enough.
And so I had to decide, and again, this is an important point to bring up with people that you're young operators.
Yeah.
When you get something dropped in your lap that you are not qualified to do, what do you do?
Yep.
Now, interestingly, you had Rochelle Brown on your podcast.
I spoke very highly of you.
She's a lovely person for lying like that.
Yeah.
But yes, she's my mentee currently, and we talk about the differences between operators and differences between types of operators. And when I say types of operators, we're gonna go here now, and who knows?
Strap on, let's go.
We're gonna say between men and women.
Okay.
All
right.
Because what we talked about, and what I talk about with all of the people, especially the female operators that I work with, and some that I try to help out when possible.
Pauline Edwards is another person who spoke very highly of you.
She's
Pauline.
also an amazing operator. Generally speaking, if a woman feels like she's 90% qualified for a job, but 10% not qualified for a job.
I know where you're going with this.
She will say,
she'll be honest.
No, I'm not qualified. Thank you very much.
Honest isn't the right word. She'll sell herself short.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
she'll only say she's qualified if she's 110% qualified.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
And if a man thinks he is 10% qualified, but 90% not qualified, he'll say, I'm your guy.
So I'm going to go out on a limb and say you took the Wisconsin job.
I took the Wisconsin job.
Yeah.
So I took the Wisconsin job.
It's a very astute observation. It's why to me, if you ever ask, if you have a female operator you're working with and you go, you think you can handle this? And they say yes, you don't even have to question it.
Yeah, of course. You know that they're going to be able to teach you how to do it.
And done it, and you're like, great. Because
they will have taught it
you're
to
like,
like 5
I can
other
watch
people.
you and learn how to do
exactly,
it.
Right?
Yeah.
So I then wrapped the movie. The sound mixer asked me if I was interested in doing the next movie that he had lined up, and I.
That was a good moment.
It was such a lovely.
Yes,
lovely.
yeah,
I still have that taste in my
Yeah,
mouth from
yeah.
what that felt like.
Yep.
I was like, no, I don't. I'm never doing sound again, and you're the main reason why. And then I went to Rory Knepp, who asked me, hey, what are you doing next?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to operate a movie. And he said, what? And he said, well, I'm getting a Steadicam and so on. And he was livid.
Wow.
I mean, if anybody who knows Rory knows that he's a wonderful guy who speaks who speaks his mind, even though, and he's hyperbolic about stuff, but he's a wonderful guy. So he wasn't actually livid with me, but he's like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
And literally 6 months later, he bought his Steadicam.
Wow.
But anyway,
Okay.
So I had a week before my Steadicam arrived, and then a week after my Steadicam arrived. And so, of course, the first thing that I was going to do was I had to go to Panavision.
Sure. Go build it, figure out
Right?
how to buy. Yeah.
Exactly. And this was not this Panavision that we're at right now, but it was the old Panavision,
Yeah.
right? And I remember going to the person that was across. I had never been in there before. I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. This is Camera House. And there was a person across from the desk, and I think it was a prep tech. Who knew? I didn't know what a prep tech was at that point. And I said, hi, my name is Geoff. I was wondering if I could ask for a huge favor. I am going to be operating a movie, and I was wondering if I could play with some of your cameras and maybe also work out the thing with the wheels.
The thing with the wheels.
And of course he's like Rory. What is this? And I looked over his shoulder, and on the board was a movie that was prepping. That was the movie.
The movie, the Wisconsin movie.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was prepping there.
Yeah. Which nobody had even mentioned to you, or you probably didn't even know to ask.
No, of course not. No. I had no idea that was it. I just was like, Panavision, okay,
Prepping.
they have
What's
lots of camera stuff.
Yeah, okay.
let me go there.
All right.
And so I spent a couple of days orienting and having prep techs that were very helpful, learning as much as I could about cameras, practicing the gearhead.
Your camera assistants who were prepping must have been petrified when they saw what you knew.
Luckily, they only, because it was a non-union movie, they had a week-long prep. So I was there before they got there.
Oh,
right?
I
So
see.
This was
It
2
hadn't
weeks,
started
week,
yet.
2 weeks in.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So it was on the board as being earmarked.
Oh, I got you.
But
So,
they weren't there yet because that would have been bad.
so you got a lot of the straight dropping off the cliff stuff out of the way before they showed up.
for sure, right?
Yeah.
And then, so I did that, and then the Steadicam arrived, and I spent as much time at home with a brick and on the thing, and
Like we all did.
and went off to Wisconsin to do this movie. And somehow, and it was a heavy camera. It was a BL4.
Okay.
For 80% of the people listening to this, you won't even know what a BL4 is.
No, it was a pig.
It's a 35 millimeter camera, by the way, for
Yeah.
those people who don't
Aeroflex.
know that.
Yeah.
It's an Aeroflex camera, and the mags went left to right as opposed to front to back or top to bottom, which meant that at the end of a mag, the camera was tilted in a completely different
Yeah,
direction
because
than
the film
where
was
it started.
shifting from one side to
Exactly,
the other.
that's
So
right.
Steadicam-wise, it
Yep.
changed. Yeah.
And it was a BL4. It was a BL4 that I had to put my oneyepiece tap
Oh, the
onto
eyepiece
it.
tap. That was fun.
Exactly. So somehow, I don't know how, but the movie went decently well. But I will say that the DP, who did not know what I knew or didn't know, I had to figure out a way to learn without giving anybody the idea that I needed to learn.
Yeah.
So he would talk to me with language that I didn't understand. So I had to figure out what he meant.
So did
and
you
had to
just
be very
sort of
clever.
nod and then walk away? and
Well,
try to-
so he'd be like, oh, man, I think on this one, I don't think we have a choice. You're going to have to short side him on this. I'd be like, yeah, of course. And I'd be like, and I would sort of pan around a little bit just to try to find the good frame. And eventually, he'd be like, yeah, try that. And I was like, oh, okay.
That's what short-sighting is.
Okay, so the nose is closer to
By the way, just a side note, for anybody who's listening right now and has this problem, this is why the op has a section called the words. And when you get into this, you can turn around on your phone and look up short side and you go, okay, I know what this is. So this would have helped you greatly.
Yes, it would have very much helped
That's
me.
hysterical.
So
do you think he ever figured out how little you knew?
I don't know. I mean, he was British.
Okay.
So, and he was nice.
Okay. You're lucky.
And I was very, very lucky. I had a boom operator who I think knew. He either knew me from being a boom operator or he knew of me or something like that.
Yeah.
But he knew, but not only did he know, but he was a saint. He stayed out of my frame. He
Amazing.
told me about stuff. He said, "Hey, aren't you seeing that mark on this?" And this was film. This is on a film on a shitty tap.
Those are the boom operators that we all hope for because they see everything. And if they share it with you, they can pull you out of the fire fast.
If it weren't for him, I'm sure I would have gotten fired on that movie.
Wow.
And that movie went well enough, and I did well enough to then go on to do 3 other movies with those same producers, like within that next year and a half. So I paid off my Steadicam not in 3 years, but in under a year.
That's fantastic. Oh, that's so great. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the thing that got you hired back was not your exceptional camera operating,
right?
But was your attitude and your personality.
100%. It was my passion. It was my willingness to try anything.
Yeah.
And I think it was, frankly, I think that generally speaking, when you're doing low-budget horror movies, people can be a bit blasé about it. I just loved every moment of it. I loved everything about it. And so I think, this is something that I tell everybody that is willing to listen, and I know you do as well, because I've heard you say this. Attitude, energy, and enthusiasm count for 70% of the job. If you can be a cheerleader and bring the best out in people, then you can get away with a lot of incompetence. If you can also wind up being not completely incompetent at the same time, then you're golden.
Yeah.
You know, but this is one thing, and I think we probably have to stop soon. I don't even know.
No, we're doing fine.
Well, one of the things that I say
when you get boring, I'll tell you.
Okay, good. So
and we're
nice.
done.
And we're done.
I stopped recording 10 minutes ago. You've just been talking. Yeah. Sorry. Go. What were
And
you
you're not
saying?
even offering any beer, and don't even say because Panavision doesn't have a no beer policy.
Well, what were you saying?
There is something that I think is very important. It has to do a little bit with negotiating tactics and things that I actually learned when I was studying. One of the great things about going to college, learning all the things that I wanted to learn, I could just take classes that I thought were interesting, and they didn't have to really adhere necessarily to my major because I could fold them into my major.
Yeah.
So what I have discovered is that in relationship building and in working with people, there is the value of being liked, but that's the undergraduate level version of it. People want to be liked, and they think that if they're liked, then people want to be around them. And that's true. But it's sort of like we all know people that are in the group that we orbit in. Those people that are like, he's the funny one or she's the funny one. And they're hilarious and they're awesome and they're great. And you want to be around them because they make you laugh. But a part of them sometimes make you think like, I'm not the funny one. I like to be around them, but look at all these people that like him or her for being so very, And so there are times when I'm not in the mood to be around the funny one or to be around the person that is like the exemplar of virtue that we all want to be in whatever facet. So the graduate level version of this is that it's important to be liked, but it's more important to make somebody like themselves more because you're in their company. Which is where that phrase, you complete me or you make me a better person. That's where that comes from. When somebody figures out a way to bring out the best in me so that I can take a step back and say like, I like myself right now. I like what I'm contributing to this conversation. I like the amount of energy and enthusiasm I have. I like this stuff. When you are the person that makes somebody else be a better person, they will never want to have you out of your sight.
That's a big piece of wisdom right there. That's impressive.
It's a small thing, but it is a big thing, right?
It's a high concept. Let me put it that way. Yeah.
So the way to execute that,
That was my next question.
Yeah, it's something that, and look, people are tired of hearing me say this because every time I talk in public or every time I speak with anybody, I always say this, that you have to figure out a way to not just align agendas with the people that you want to be around, right? It's this whole thing about trust. Trust arguably is the most important part of any relationship, whether it be a personal relationship or a professional relationship. Without trust, you can't build on a relationship. So trust is arguably the first thing that you need. Trust is very, very difficult to build if you don't know somebody. And so there's the chicken and the egg problem. If I don't know you, I can't trust you. But if I can't trust you, then I can't really figure out a way to know you. So what is the best way? And they teach this in poli-sci classes, and they teach this in negotiating classes, and it's really smart. The best way to build trust isn't to say, hey, you can trust me. It's to say, hey, what is important to me is what is important to you. Meaning, if you're aligning agendas, if I know that you care about the things that I care about, then I no longer have to worry about whether I can trust you. Because I don't have to know that you are going to have my best interests at heart, because I know that you're going to have your best interests at heart. And by the transitive property, A plus B plus B plus, you are going to have my best interests at heart because our agendas have been aligned. And so you immediately build trust.
Yeah.
And so I always say this to operators who are trying to build trust with DPs, with directors, with actors. It's important for you to give them a sense that you care more about them than you care about yourself. And I have dozens of examples of times when I've sandbagged myself or make my life more difficult. And I know you do this too. I make my life more difficult because I know that I have an opportunity to align my agendas with somebody and make somebody see that I'm willing to throw myself on a sword to make their life easier.
Yep.
Right? And so when you delve into that a little bit more, you figure out communication tactics to dog whistle or to do things where if you're in a group and there's a group dynamic going on and there's a hierarchy, let's say you're the lowly operator that hasn't done 4 months of prep with the director or the DP.
You're the first-time operator on a Wisconsin movie that you've never been an operator
That's
on
right.
before.
Exactly.
Just to use that example.
That's right.
Yeah.
The best thing to do is you don't, on the one hand, you want to contribute, but you can't contribute in a way that makes people feel like you're stepping beyond yourself.
Above your grade, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the best thing to do is to contribute in a way that makes people feel like they had a hand in that contribution.
Yeah.
Right? And you do it all the time, right? We all, the really successful operators, for that matter, DPs and ACs as well,
Anything.
they figure out a way to make an idea that they have actually seem like it's somebody that somebody else
Guy
has.
B and I had a discussion about this where it was very funny because we realized there are certain phrases that we just have go-tos. Is there any value in, what would you think of, and it's all these things where it's just like you're just sort of pondering, but you're really, and you're giving them the idea, but you're really saying to them, do you think this has value? Because you make the value judgment. I don't know if this really has value. What do you?
And the next Machiavellian version of that
Yeah.
is when you have an idea that you really want to get out there, and because it's important to you, because either you feel like the prevailing notion right now is a bad one, because maybe people aren't playing chess and they're making a decision that you know is going to...
They've turned down a road that you see the
Exactly.
accident at the end of the highway.
Or, frankly, you do need to figure out a way to make your life a little bit easier, but you don't want people to think that you are selfish enough to impose your needs on the group dynamic.
Nope.
The best thing, and it's amazing that this works, because if you were to play these recordings back, everybody would be like, whoa, hold on a second, what just happened? All you have to do is listen to somebody's idea. The idea that you don't like, or the idea that you think is off the mark, and say, oh my God, I love that. I love that so much, because that means that, and then you say your idea, which is not that idea. But once you say, oh my God, I love that so much, the person who has just heard that is not thinking about what you've said. They are basking in the glow of adulation. And they're thinking like, oh my God, yes, I'm in this group, and somebody is adoring the fact that, yes, and even, this is the funny thing, even high status people, this is what's very interesting. High status people that you would think have no business wanting your praise still want your praise.
They want everybody wants everybody's praise. That's the end of the story. But now I'm looking back on my texts and I'm noticing you text me that a lot, and I'm a little
You want to meet at 10? You want to meet at 10? I love that idea. You know what I love the most about meeting at 10 is that we could move it to 12.
We could move to 9. And then I'm texting back going, nice, sounds great. No, that's but by the way, that's I mean, here's the funny thing. I listen to all these things that you say that have so much value, and the interesting thing to me is it's a lot of this stuff that I know. I just haven't thought it out to the level that you have, or if I have, I haven't expressed it the way you have, because you have a really good way. But I have this image of like the two of us doing a movie together, and you're on A and I'm on B, and we're right next to each other, and there's a thought bubble above yours, and it just has all of this amazing stuff in it, and there's a thought bubble in front of mine, and it's like a pig lying back on like a farm yard, like eating an apple.
And you know, there's something to be said for brevity. So I think at the end of the day, you probably win that one.
I don't know about that, but I'm just saying. But no, that's absolutely fascinating.
But anyway, so to close that circle, essentially, it's that the reason why it's valuable to do that is because, to go back to this idea that everybody thinks it's most important to be the person that people respect or feel like is the preeminent voice in some discussion, some topic, some argument. But if you're playing the long game, if you're Machiavellian about it, you're looking around at the people that are potentially going to get you work, and you're going to hitch your wagon to them. I'm going to say like, all right, I'm going to make them feel like they are a better person for me being here.
Yeah. No, it's so smart and so dead on, and such great information for people who are starting out. I wish I had that information, because I probably would have done much better. But
you've done pretty amazingly.
I'm not
so
happy.
I don't know what else you would have done.
I'm just saying. But there are certain positions, certain situations. But one of the things that I was thinking when you were saying it was on a much smaller level. It's why early on, with an actor, there's that weird thing when you first meet an actor, and it's like, you want to endear yourself to them on some level, and endear isn't the right word, but you want them to trust you and know that you're partners. Yep. But you also don't want to go like, hey, Robert De Niro, I really loved you, and blah, blah,
you can't be sycophantic, right?
So it's
for sure.
It's a weird push, and sometime down the line, like 3 weeks later, you can have a moment where it just seems right, and you go, I just have to tell you, by the way, I loved you. And by then it's acceptable if you have that relationship. But so one of the early things is like, you just go up and you go, hey, if it's okay, I'm just going to have makeup come in and just check you before we go. And and then they know that you're looking out for something, or you have something in your teeth. I mean, there's ways to say this stuff, obviously. But, or that my favorite is always like, in between a take, they'll pick up their phone to call their agent or something, and you just lean forward and you go, your microphone is still on, and, or something like that. But then they know that you've got your eye on them and that there's a trust issue there.
Yeah.
And so then that's the way that you build that. It's those passive little things, right? You know,
Actors, it's really great that you bring this up.
Well, I want to ask you about this. This was one of my next things because
Yeah.
you've worked with some massive actors and quote unquote people who are sometimes known as being tough actors.
Tough
to
or
work
difficult.
with.
Yeah,
and I
for
want
sure.
to ask you about that without giving any names.
It is very interesting, and I think you would agree that even actors that are theoretically in their own world, the method actors and so on, right?
Yeah.
You'd think that they're not paying attention, but they are.
Oh, 100%.
They are absolutely paying attention to everything. And in fact, the people that are reading me the most are the people that are seemingly unaware that there's even a movie being shot around them.
It's really it's so funny that you said that because I've noticed that too, and it's a really strange phenomenon. It's almost like they split their brains into two things, and the one side is collecting even more information, maybe to go to it later.
Yeah.
And the other one, which is controlling them at that moment, if for lack of a better word, is not even in the same room as you are.
Yeah, exactly. I have two quick stories about that.
Yeah.
Right. The first is I did a sort of a low budget movie with Zach Braff, and I had never worked with Zach before, and I had been told that he could be not difficult, but hard to engage. He wasn't necessarily like the crew's best friend, and I actually also prefer that. I don't like it when actors are particularly engagey with anybody, especially with me, because I never want the director to think that there's any possibility that anything that I or anybody else does could potentially affect the performance of an actor. So I'm very judicious about my communication with actors. But so I was doing this movie with Zach, and we're like into, and it's a situational. It's a comedy, but it's a serious comedy. It's a movie called Wish I Was Here. Okay. A small movie that is nice. It's good, but it's sort of like a Garden State, but 10 years later, 15 years later, and 4 weeks into it, we're in a car. I'm in the back seat. He's having a discussion with his daughter in the movie, and he says something, and I'm behind him in the back seat with a camera like this
up on your shoulder,
on my shoulder, and he says something, that is improvised, and he says it, and it really surprised me because it was a really smart joke. I mean, it was really like intelligent.
Yeah.
It wasn't low-hanging fruit. It was like you need a cherry picker to get that fruit. It was really good. And so I was just like, I just kind of shook my head and just like, I was really smiling. I wasn't making any noise. And at the end of the take, Zach, like he just, he's also the director and he was the actor. He was doing both. Yeah. He takes a big breath and he goes, week 4, and it's the first time I was able to get Geoff to smile. And I was
That's a badge of honor right there, actually.
Fuck,
but yeah.
But and this is a story I've told a bunch of times, but it's very, I think it's an interesting one, and it has to do with American Hustle. I was doing this movie, American Hustle, and Bradley Cooper was in it, and I remember there was a scene where we were shooting in Boston in the summer in a practical location. It was very, very hot. And with David O. Russell movies, you're just running the Steadicam 100% of the time, no blocking. Yeah. You just go in with the camera and the actors go in and you just figure it out and you just roll until the camera rolls out. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you can turn the camera off
before it rolls out.
But not always.
Yeah,
there was one time when we rolled out and he says, don't turn the camera off. I'm like, well, we have to turn the camera off to reload. But anyway, so Bradley was doing an amazing job. It was a very emotional scene, and he was just, pacing around, and it was just an incredible amount of energy, and it was just a tour de force performance. And while that was happening, I was looking down at my monitor, and it was so hot that the sweat from my brow was starting to drip down to the edge of my nose. And sadly, this is radio, so nobody can see what I'm doing. But I was doing this little shake with my head
to try to get it off,
to get it to drip off, because it was itching my nose like crazy. So I was just doing this quick little shake with my head like that, and it finally it went off, and we end the take, and David Russell is in the next room, and Bradley says, "I want to go again right now, David. Don't even come in. I want to go right now." No notes, just go right now.
Yep.
So we reload and we go again, and it's a great take. And we cut, and then Bradley comes over to me and he says, "Was that one better?" I said, "Was what better? Was that take better?"
Wow.
I said, "Than what? Than the take before? You were shaking your head as that take was going on. I mean, you were clearly not digging it." And I was like, "No, oh my God," I was mortified. I was like, "No, there was sweat on my thing," and and I mean, that to me is, and there are probably 8 or 9 examples of that in my career that I can say, but that's the one that is literally the most on the nose, literally.
Yeah.
Right? Which is, you are the first audience. You are arguably the only audience when an actor is actually acting, and your energy and what you're bringing to the table, and what you are what's emanating out of you is palpable, especially for actors who are very sensitive
And are 3 feet away from you.
Exactly.
And need a connection, by the way.
Exactly.
And sometimes you are like, I mean, I know you've had this situation. I've had situations where actors have basically said, "I'm going to use you right now. I'm going to use you. I'm going to use your energy, or I'm going to engage with you, or whatever it is."
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
but
right.
Those are 2 fantastic stories that I mean, look, there's so much to be learned from both of those. But the things that immediately occur to me are, one, it's interesting to me that you said, sort of as an aside, that Zach was the director and the actor.
Mm-hmm.
Because interestingly, I think the reason why, I mean, I don't know, I'm making a guess here, but that the director in him liked that you smiled at what the actor did.
Yes, that's true. It's a good point.
Because it's the feedback that the director would want. The actor
true.
might not care whether you do get it,
that's
because
true.
it's not for you. But for the director, it's like, okay, that landed.
Yeah, that's true. It's
so there's something,
the studio audience.
There's something really interesting there, and
exactly.
it would be interesting in a parallel world if he wasn't the director to see if he had any, and maybe he still would.
But one of the things also that you said, and which I completely agree with, you have to be careful that you can't be sycophantic, because then that can feel like you are. It's a false.
Well, it breaks the trust.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Well, the one thing that I found, and I mean, I'm saying, but I'm sure you found this too, is the one thing that I found that big actors value more than anything else is being treated like a normal person.
Yeah.
And so 9 times out of 10, the discussions that I will have with an actor are usually 3 to 4 weeks in or whatever, once I've realized that that's acceptable and not at the right moment.
Exactly,
and,
that's right.
at craft service or whatever. Yeah. And it's just like, hey, I overheard you talking about your kids on a softball team. How old's your kid?
Exactly.
And that's actually the stuff that they're like, oh, this is a normal person talking to a normal person.
That's right.
That's
a good point.
It's weird. And I've actually bonded on that way with people. I mean, again, overhearing is probably a bad example, because then it's like I've been listening in your conversations or whatever. But I mean, I did. I don't even know what that was called. Ant-Man 22 or whatever. Mm-hmm. I did reshoots with Bill Pope, and Paul Rudd's like the nicest person in the world, and I hit it off with him immediately. But there was one day, and I hadn't had much back and forth other than like, hey, good morning, just niceties. But he's like the most down-to-earth person in the world. And he brought in another, for a small scene, it was a nothing little scene at the beginning. It was like a transitional scene at the beginning of the movie. But what I found out was they would bring in stand-up comics who are friends of theirs who maybe aren't doing as well, and give them a piece, a part in the movie, because it pays back dividends. And he and this guy were doing Steve Martin's "Comedy Is Not Pretty" album, which, because we're the same age, they grew up on and I grew up on, and I knew by heart. And at one point, they messed it up, and I couldn't help it. And I went, actually, Paul, it's this, then this. And I said, actually, Paul, it's this, and he goes, oh, that's right. And he goes, you know the album? I'm like, come on, we're this, of course. And then the 3 of us started doing it. It was just, but again,
amazing.
it had nothing to do with the industry. It was just being normal. But in the Bradley Cooper one, again, what a wonderful thing, though, that he wasn't upset that you were quote unquote
Right.
shaking your head,
Right.
And he wasn't upset. He valued that. So
Right, and-
it's clear that he valued you as a partner in the making of the movie, and
I
that
think
you
that's-
had built up over time.
That's exactly right. It's about setting the table for that,
Yeah.
right? That's the thing. I think the first couple of days are always the tricky ones with actors because you are literally setting the table. And you were talking about overhearing stuff. One of the things that I recommend, and again, this can be considered devious or Machiavellian, but I like to. Again, I want to put myself on the island with the actor or with the director. And one of the ways to do that is to say, for example, if I know that this is going to be a tricky scene for an actor, and yes, they have to hit marks, but oftentimes having to hit a mark, I know what it's like to have to just, divide your brain into two to try to do these technical things. When it's difficult, you want to try to be myopic about this one task. And so what I will sometimes do, and I'm not proud of it, although I am, is I will say to the second, hey, you know what? Let's get rid of that mark, or let's not even, don't even worry about dotting the mark. I think I don't want to make the actor think about where they're...
Give them their freedom.
Exactly. Give them the freedom. We'll figure out what it is. Now, it's not that I'm saying it. It's at the exact decibel level that I'm saying it. Because I'm saying it softly enough so that it seems like I'm saying it just to the AC, but I'm saying it loud enough that the actor who's getting the final touches can hear me say it.
But again, it's like you said, look, you're controlling that situation,
Yeah.
but you're controlling it for a positive reason because
Exactly.
it's your way of it. It would be like the same thing as going up to the actor and putting your arm around them and going, look, whatever you need, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
You're safe here.
Yeah.
I've got what you need. I'm going to help you. And it's just a different way of doing that. Look, all of this is fantastic. So I'm going to ask you one final question, but I'm going to say something to you that I want to say just before you do it is the work that you did on the Joker. I think I called you after that. I didn't even know you really, or maybe I emailed you.
Yeah,
or something
sure,
like that.
we didn't know each other.
I don't watch Marvel movies.
Right.
I'm not a Marvel
Well, this is
movie.
a DC movie, but yes.
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
now
but you're
all
right. It's still a comic
Get
book.
me off this podcast. I don't watch DC movies,
Yeah,
okay, or Marvel movies,
Yeah.
or any of those movies. And someone said, no, this is different. You got to see it. And I went, okay, I'm going to see it. And I went to the movie theater. And first of all, not only is it a great movie, but I think I told you this, to me, it's an important movie because of what it talks about mental health in this country. And
Yeah.
I mean, I was blown away by that movie. But your operating in that movie was so beautiful and such a part of that movie and such a complete and seamless part of the storytelling of that. I mean, it was as much a part of that movie as his performance was, which is, of course, the entire, insanely. And I remember specifically there's one thing where he's in like a subway bathroom with a mirror
bathroom,
and the whole
yeah.
dancing, which of course everybody, but and what he's doing is incredible, but your movement with the camera in that was so lyrical and you were so tied into what was happening. I remember watching that and going, I'm watching something truly extraordinary.
Well, that's
and
very kind of you to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I just, that specifically, was that mostly off the cuff and just kind of figuring out what he was doing and following his lead?
It's crazy because the script says Joker runs into the bathroom, sees he has to get rid of his gun, stashes the gun behind the toilet, and washes his hands.
Yeah. So it's Ben-Hur, they race.
No, but that's the point. Is it's not just Ben-Hur, they race. It's this other thing.
This other. That's true.
And so, right, and so they have a meeting. This is the only time I am not invited to a private rehearsal, and I'm literally thinking like, all right, I'm out of the club.
Clearly,
they don't want me
there's
there
another
because
operator coming in.
Well, that or they just no longer, because
Yeah.
I'd always been involved in every discussion, every private rehearsal.
Yes.
But this one, don't. Right, and so I'm like, okay, great, and so I'm like pouting, on the opposite side of the stage, and then they're like 45 minutes later, okay, we're gonna shoot. I'm like, okay, so what are we doing? Like, no.
They made an active. They didn't want you to know.
We're not going to tell you, right?
Yeah.
And so I was still expecting to him to do what he was, right? But and
so
luckily I had my slingshot.
Yeah.
Right, that was very
overhead
important.
System where the camera
right.
holds.
So I could put the camera at any level, and more importantly, when he runs in and he's breathlessly, facing the door.
Yeah.
And I'm expecting him to okay, when's he going to stash the gun? When's he going to wash his hands? And they had surrounded the set with speakers, and that piece of music
is playing.
So
you
Hilder,
could react to the music as he
So I
reacted
heard
to
the music suddenly go on.
Amazing.
And I'm like, fuck.
What's going
and then
on?
I look, and then I see his toe is starting to wiggle. And I'm like, okay.
Great.
And it's only because I had the slingshot on, because I was looking at the monitor, but I could also see what was going
Your
on with
eye
his
wasn't
feet.
on the eyepiece.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So I immediately went down, and then the rest was sort
the
of
rest
that
was
thing.
just follow
Yeah.
the lead.
Yeah.
But obviously, again, that's a director and a DP who say, Geoff is so in tune. We know enough that if we don't let him know,
right,
it's going to
hopefully
actually be better because, I think it's sensible. I don't think they would have just done that with anyone. So kudos to you. I mean, that's it's a fantastic moment, and it's a fantastic movie. I was in awe of your work on that movie.
Well, thank you very much.
So I'm going to ask you one final question, which is what I ask of everybody. Advice to operators who are coming up, advice to people getting in the business who are trying to move up, trying to get through, or something you wish or when you were younger that you know now that you didn't then?
It's tough to boil down advice because, as you full well know, and you're such an amazing teacher and mentor and somebody that there are probably the better answer would be, what are the 5 things, right? But I'd say the most important thing, and I think it has less to do with what we do as operators and more as we do as humans, which is protect your fire. And by that I say that the most important thing that you have that will drive you along your way in your career and in your life is the engine, the furnace, the fire that allows you to pursue that which gives you purpose and meaning. And it's very easy to say that, protect your fire. But what that really means is that be very selfish with what it is that gives you the energy to pursue what you're after. Because it is very easy for one reason or another for that fire to go out, and suddenly you no longer have the motivation, the locomotion, the energy to pursue that. And so it is something that a lot of people don't do because it's a very selfish act. Everybody runs into a situation fairly consistently where they have to decide whether or not they're willing to do something that could potentially cheapen their understanding of something or make it be less valuable for the sake of some short-term goal. And if there's any chance that lessens or lowers the temperature of your fire, then you do that at your own peril. You are the only person that has control of your fire, and you need to keep it stoked throughout your entire career.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll be back soon with another great episode. Don't forget to check us out on theop.io for all sorts of information on operating and storytelling. So thanks for listening and have a great day.